in Germany. In 2002, you joined automotive lighting research and development, where you did a lot of things, particularly for projection system, LED headlamp, laser headlamp application. And from 2018, you are in Maréli, still innovation manager for autonomous driving and others. And since 2021, so last year, you are lead engineer for sensor integration, particularly for LiDAR, radar, camera. And this is what you will speak about now. So you have a stage.
So, thank you very much for the kind introduction. Glad to see so a lot of people today. And I'd like to talk a little bit about light-emphasized sensor integration, and to see there are a lot of colleagues who contribute to this talk, and I'm pretty glad to have some of them with me, because without them the talk might be pretty short. Today we heard in the keynotes a little bit about the world of sensor and the sensor integration and everything which is come up with autonomous driving so far. And I like to bring the two worlds, the lighting and the sensor world, together. And I hope I can convince you in the next 20 minutes to follow my track, because if you don't, you will miss a lot. I'd like to talk about integration, what we mean about sensor integration, what might be the challenges, the advantages of sensor integrations, and of course, the main topic, how can we emphasize the sensor, how can we illuminate the sensor, how can we create really new things by integrating sensor in the product. Let's start with the integration. What do we mean with sensor integration? And if we talk about sensor integration, we often showed the smart corner concept. So that means that we offer a headlamp, a rear lamp, a front grille module, or even a roof module or a gimbal as a host for the sensor. So we try to integrate sensors in products which are already well known. And if we talk about sensors, we talk about radar, LiDAR, cameras, something you can use for vehicle to whatever communication, and we like to illuminate the sensors. So you can see here a prototype where LiDAR sensors are marked blue. Of course, be totally aware, blue is not so common in headlamps. Anyhow, that gives you the first impression how a sensor integration can look like. And we will need that integration, because styling will push us for sensor integration. Because if you look to the Waymo car on the left-hand side today, you can see on the roof box there are the sensors not integrated. And when you look to the styling studies on the motor shows, you can see the picture below. You do not see any sensor anymore. And with the upcoming of autonomous driving, we heard today in the keynotes, the numbers of sensors will rise. So we expect that for level 4 and 5, we have more than 30 sensors integrated into the car. And that means you have to find a space. And you do not only have to find the space, but you have also to respect that at least for level 4, you need a 360-degree field of view. And so I promise you, you will use at the end every available space in the car to place the sensors. And if you look to when the vision might become true, then maybe within the next 10 years, we have to integrate the sensor inside the car. And we are on that way, because if you look, for example, to the Audi e-tron, which is launched in 2020, there are 20 sensors integrated in that car to give the car the eyes to see the environment. And when we talk about sensors and what will be, the experts said, what will be the future, then cameras take a large portion in that sensor which used for autonomous driving. And I had a really fruitful discussion yesterday with a colleague from TU Darmstadt, and we discussed about what light will be needed for the cameras for autonomous driving. And at the end we could not agree, but we agree in one thing: light will be still there, and that's good for all sitting here in that room. What are the challenges for the sensor integration, and what new issues raise when we are going to integrate sensors? So you can see here 3 generations of the Mercedes Class S, starting from 2006 and ending with the latest model in 2020. And when you look to the functions of that module, then you can see in the 2006 module, in the 2006 headlamp, we only have low beam, high beam, we have an infrared system, and we have a cornering light. And the area which is covered by function, the front face of the headlamp, which is covered by function, is 30%. Meanwhile, the styling area, which remains, are 70%. And then we add more functions in the headlamps, and at least we have the pixel light and the DLP light, and the portion, the share, changed vice versa. And now we have 70% functional area in the headlamp, and only 30% styling area which is left. And that brings us to a challenge, besides the other challenge we do have for the sensor integration, that we deal with reflection, we deal with beam distortion, we deal with reflection, but these are all common problems we already had in the headlamp development, in the rear lamp development. But the new challenge is to find the space, because when we look, for example, to a space, mounting space comparison from some of our modules, then you can see on the left-hand side the modules and this area which they are covered, the front face which they are covered. And on the left-hand side, I plotted some common sensors. And you can see that the space which is at the end occupied by a sensor is similar to one of the modules. And that brings us, and all of us here, to the challenge how to integrate, how to find that space. And one of the answers is integrated, maybe in terms of a DRL function, daylight running lamp, and illuminated. And then that an integration is possible. Can you see here in 2 prototypes, one of which is the Mercedes Class S, where we do the LiDAR integration, and the other one is the T-Compass, where we do radar integration. And for those who are a little bit far behind from the screen, you can mark the area, and you can see that they have reached an aesthetical integration and a functional integration in that headlamp by keeping all the features which are available in that premium headlamp and in the rear lamp as well. What will be the advantages of sensor integration? Yeah, why should we do that? And one of the advantages are that sensors in headlamp and rear lamps recognize things early. So I would not say they will recognize things better, but they recognize things different. And as I must also say here today, we cannot reach the 360-degree field of view out of the headlamp, out of the rear lamp, out of the frill module, because we will need sensors everywhere on the car, and thinking in level 4, level 5, autonomous driving. But with that really prominent host, as in the rear lamp and in the headlamp, you can reach a really good field of view and a wide field of view. And for not all scenarios, of course, but for example, for the scenario crossing, if you approach a road, then the headlamp, which entering the crossing first, gives you a unique field of view, which you will not reach with any mounting position on the car. And that brings, for example, in certain scenarios, if we compare the sensor integration in the bumper and the sensor integration in the roof and the headlamp, the situation that when you integrate the sensor in the bumper on the left side of the bumper, then you have a recognition distance, in that case of 35 meters, putting it on the roof 37. But when you place the sensor in the headlamp, then you have a distance where you can see that, of course, a certain scenario, an obstacle in 55 meters. So that brings you an advantage, and that's what I mean with a unique field of view. But, of course, there are a lot of advantages more. For example, that if you use the smart corner concept, then you can have an environmental protection. You can use a cleaning system, which might be already in the headlamp. You can integrate heating. You can use or reuse the wiring. You have a data bus ready in the headlamps and the rear lamps often too. You can have that really unique field of view, which I pointed out before. And at the end, you can have a stylish and aesthetical integration, and you can illuminate the sensors. But when we talk about sensor integration, the things how we look to the development change. In the past, if we talk about lighting, so we have more or less geometrical optic, we talk about illumination, we have the protection, the one way, and we can everything manage with ray tracing. And if we change to the sensing, then we go to wave optics, we have to deal with interference, we have to deal with phase shift, we have to respect optical imaging, we have the transmitted and the receiver path, so we have a two-path crossing to the headlamp outer lens and the rear lamp outer lens, and we have to go from ray tracing to ray tracing and finite element simulation to give an overall working simulation for set sensors. Sensor illumination. Yeah? What can we do to emphasize that sensor and to push that aesthetical integration into the headlamps, rear lamps, and front grille modules? And if we talk about sensors, I mentioned it before, we talked about cameras, we talked about ultrasonic, LiDAR, and radar, and every sensor has unique advantages and unique disadvantages, and so at the end I would say some of them will find their way into the cars, some others not. And of course we see also in the sensors different integration options. So a camera can be good integrated into the headlamp, into the rear lamp, but it will interfere with the light. So we have to use shutter, for example. Ultrasonic will not work because you need a special housing, for example. The LiDAR is pretty common to the light modules we use today, working in infrared rays, infrared rays. And the radar has, for the one hand side, looks pretty good for the integration because radar, in fact, does not interfere with light. And so we thought at that point radar might be a good opportunity to start a prototype. And so we find a lot of challenges which we have to solve with the radar integration. But first, what do we aiming for? So we said, okay, and we're going to integrate a radar into one of the headlamp, rear lamp products. We want to use the environmental cover. We have to respect the radar attenuation, which is less than 1 dB. We want to integrate heating. We want to give styling opportunities, at least with 2 colors. We want to have a metallic look, and of course we want to have the whole area where the sensor is going to transmit being illuminated. And we, at least for the prototype, we solved that issue by that what we call stack layer approach. So we use, what you can hear, different layers, and every layer has a different function, and in detail it's more complex than that slide can give you an insight. But to hide the functional areas, we have marked green the light guides and the elements which give a full area illumination. We have heating elements, we have some coverage plastic, we have methods to get a metallic look. We can use colors for painting and give some logo impression and that, and of course we have the environmental cover. And once we plotted that scenario, we find out that we have more than 1,500 possible variations. And that was pretty too much. And so we said, okay, let's start a workflow, let's see what we can do, and we established a workflow for doing that radar integration thing. And the first thing is to make an essential material check, and we built up a database with 80 pieces of plastic and more to give the insights if that material is in principle valid to work with a radar. Then you have to go for the layer, interference and absorption, because in case you're dealing with radar, the wavelengths are over the thumb, 2.5 millimeters, and that is pretty common in headlamp design and rear lamp design. And so we have to avoid certain thicknesses of the materials. Then we do a multi-layer interference check, a total loss analysis to see if we are one way, 1 dB attenuation or less. And at the end we do a final simulation, and I'd like to give you some insights to that final simulation for the radar. How does it look like? You can see on the left-hand side a radar transmission to an outer lens with 70 gigahertz, and the reflection on the bottom. And you can see if you look to the lines, the interference, which I talked about earlier. And on the right-hand side, you can see a stacking, a simulation of the whole stacking with a phase shift, because most of the common radars are acting as a phase shift radar, where they need a certain phase shift as well. And that is the simulation of a real outer lens, which we can perform in the whole headlamp. But that's not all. You have also to make a whole system simulation, and you can see on the top of the page the scenario, and on the bottom the simulation of a radar integrated in a headlamp in the range of 25 and 80 gigahertz to see if it works in the whole environment. How do we thinking to illuminate all that? That's, for example, a possibility to give illumination of the sensors, and you can place over the whole area of the sensor any structure. We make here a logo, and so you can see the simulation of the illuminated radar on the left-hand side. And of course, if you stack the light guide layers, we have seen similar approach earlier today. You can have that 3D holographic effects, which gives you at the end a three-dimensional impression of the sensing area. So I'm going to summarize. Sensors are going to occupy more and more locations on a vehicle. And we give with a smart corner concept a good host for the sensors in headlight, rear lamps and front panels as well. Cameras will still need performant lighting for autonomous driving, as I mentioned before. Sensor integration into head and rear lamps and front panels raise definitely new challenges, which are for all of us not known before, but they give a lot of advantages. And at the end, sensor illumination provides you a unique function and styling combination. And so, what to take home from all that? See the integration opportunities, accept the challenges, and take the advantage. Thank you for listening.
So thank you very much for this nice synthesis about the interest, advantages, and also challenges for this integration. So now we are being scheduled, so we shall try nevertheless to have a question and answer. So please, all the speakers, Christian, Arnaud, Alexander,